Hi, welcome back to Cooking the Books with Heather. And today I'm kind of excited. We're going to make our first recipe out of this book. This is Deep Run Roots, Vivian Howard's cookbook, Stories and Recipes from My Corner of the South. This is a different kind of cookbook than the Pools Diner cookbook, which is the one we've done most of our recipes with already. But today we're going to make slow roasted beef short ribs with herb-scented turnip puree and turnip gremolata. So that's what that looks like. That's the picture we have. It's kind of a cool weather recipe, and it is May here, and it's kind of wrong season, but this is what we wanted to go ahead and make. My husband's been wanting short ribs, so we decided we'd go ahead and make them from this cookbook. It looks not too difficult. There at least aren't any other recipes I have to make first from another part of the cookbook. For this one, this book does have some of those. But yeah, we're gonna make this. Come back and we'll start in just a minute. The first step for this recipe is to just salt and pepper the short ribs, put them in 2 different pans because we're going to add the turnips to them later, and they want to have plenty of room to roast, and put them in the oven by themselves for about an hour. I've got my salt and pepper mixed up together here, so I can just put one thing on, and I'm going to use all of this so I'm not too worried about cross-contamination. Now, I had a hard time finding big, meaty, 10-ounce each short ribs. In fact, this was pretty much all I could find. So I've got plenty of them, but they're perhaps not the best short ribs I could find for this recipe, but we'll see how it goes. So I'm just gonna get all the sides, and then once I've got it all salt and peppered up, I'm going to spread them between these 2 dishes, cover them with aluminum foil, and put them in the oven. The oven's really low at like 300. So she says when these are done, they will still require a knife and fork to eat, which I'm a little concerned about. We tend to like our short ribs a little more done than that, but we'll see. And in fact, they might actually be a little more done than that because they aren't as, big and meaty as she would prefer them to be. Figure out how to arrange these. I think for now, just put some of this, make sure I use all this salt and pepper, especially since I have a little bit more in the way of meat than her recipe calls for, so. All right. So I've got these all done. I'm going to wash my hands, put the aluminum foil on them, and then get them in the oven. So I might rearrange these a little bit later when I have to put the turnips in with them, but for now this will be fine. She says to put them in the top and bottom, like to stack them in the oven, one on one rack, one on the top and one on the bottom. I think my oven will fit both of them side by side, so that's what I'm gonna do. The recipe does not call for these to be peeled, but I'm gonna peel them just because I prefer them that way. So I'm gonna go ahead and peel these, and then so the next step is to peel these, to chop them into wedges and get them ready to go in the oven with the short ribs. So that's what I'm gonna do now. So the next step is to cut these into 2/3 inch wedges. I feel like her turnips were probably the slightly smaller ones than these, but I'm gonna go ahead and go with that. Given the picture, they look smaller than that. I'm gonna see how that turns out here. So if I don't like it, I'll cut them in half or something. So. Seems like a little bit more than a mouthful for me and my kids, so I think some of them I'm going to go ahead and kind of slice in half. So I'm going to keep doing that with the rest of them. And then in this bowl, because we're going to toss them with salt and oil to go in with the short ribs. Okay. These are all sliced up into wedges. I wanted to make them about, mouth size, bite size. That's it. And then you add some salt and some olive oil and toss them, and then they'll be ready when my timer goes off to join the short ribs in the oven. Just divide them into the pans with the short ribs. So, alrighty. I think probably now we start making. I'll probably need to chop in a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to check my book. I have my book back here on a stand that we bought specifically. Well, we bought it for this book because it doesn't stay open very well. You can't just leave it open, it closes up. So we bought a stand like this. It's very helpful and it helps keep the book clean. So I'll refer to that and see what our next step is. I could probably take a break right now, but later on I'm gonna have to have this gremolata mixed up and ready, and it's just some chopped up herbs with citrus juice and zest, and that should be fine sitting here on my counter for a little while just waiting. So I'm going to go ahead and chop my herbs and get those in this bowl with the citrus zest and juice and some honey, and so we'll get that ready. So we'll be ahead of the game later. Okay, I think I've assembled everything that I need. So, got some mint and some parsley here that I washed earlier. I'm not really going to measure it. I'm estimating amounts really, but I think that our ratio will be right. And I'm just going to chop it all up together because, well, that will be fine. And it's easier to chop a lot of herbs than it is to chop just a few herbs, in my opinion. When you're trying to chop small bits, it's hard to chop them well. So, just picking off the thick stems. I'm going to get all of this chopped up, and then we'll talk through the rest. Board for this. This will do. Okay, so this calls for grated garlic and the grated zest of an orange and a lemon. So I'm gonna grate all that stuff in here right now. I'm satisfied with that I've got enough zest off of those. So I'm gonna go ahead and slice them and catch the seeds, hopefully in here, while I juice them. Just kind of rolling, squeezing the lemon a little bit before I cut it so more juice will come out. Okay, and now this needs some honey and some hot sauce. We're gonna get some honey. I used this to measure the oil earlier, so that kind of helps the honey come out. Otherwise I would have used my other measuring plunger things, because very helpful for honey. And then some hot sauce. All right. And that's it. I'm gonna mix this up, and then looks like we have about 38 minutes before we take the short ribs out of the oven and put in the turnips to finish roasting. So we'll be back then. So my short ribs have been in the oven for about an hour, and now I need to add the turnips to them. I'm just gonna, I don't know, make room, I guess. I'm gonna rearrange a little bit because they need to not be all on top of each other. Looks like the salt has made these release a little bit of juice. But we're gonna split these up about half and half. There's already some juice in here from the short ribs, so we'll see how that works, because these are supposed to roast and not steam. So I think I don't need to put the covers back on it. I think I've distributed that as well as I possibly can. So roasting them uncovered at the same temperature for 40 minutes now. So I'm gonna put these back in the oven. And the next thing is to go ahead and get the cream mixture that we're going to puree some turnips with, some of those turnips with, after they're all cooked. I'm gonna get that steeping with some herbs. So I'll do that right now. We're gonna get the cream sort of steeping with herbs and garlic. So we've got a clove of garlic that I just smashed on the board with my knife, some thyme, some rosemary, 1 bay leaf, a tablespoon of butter. Make sure I got all the paper off that. Some crushed chilies, just a little small amount of red pepper flakes. A little bit of sugar. tablespoon was dirty, so I'm using 2 half tablespoons. And then we have some whole milk and some heavy cream. And so we're going to put this on the stove over low heat just to sort of infuse the flavors into the milk and cream. And then when it's time to puree those, we'll take out the large pieces. And then we'll be all done. So now we're just waiting for the turnips to roast for 40 minutes. Then we're going to take them out, stir them up again, roast them a little bit longer before we do anything else. So pretty easy so far. We'll be right back. Okay, my short ribs and turnips, my short ribs have been in the oven for a total of 2.5 hours. My turnips have been in for like an hour and a half. I guess that makes it. And so now it's time to puree half of the turnips, and the other half we mix with the gremolata that we made earlier. So first I'm gonna go ahead and take out the garlic, the bay leaf, and the thyme and rosemary. These are all the sort of things that won't puree well, and they've already given flavor to this. And then I'm going to take about half of my turnips and put them in here in the blender. Seems like not a lot. Now it said 2 pounds. 2 pounds is what I ordered for my produce box. We'll see. This seems like an awful lot of cream for this, but we're gonna do it. I guess whatever. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour what's left in my blender. And then blend this up. It's gonna be loud. All right. So this is kind of loose. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more of my turnips to it, just because I don't think I want it to be quite that loose. So my gremolata will be fewer turnips and more gremolata itself, more of the herbs. Okay, I'm just gonna move this a little bit out of the way. There we go. Move it out of the way. And we're going to mix this with what's left. It's not going to be a whole lot, but really you're looking for the flavor of the herbs and the citrus in this anyway. So mix that in here. So there we go. And that is really it. My short ribs are in the oven, just sort of keeping warm. But now I'm just going to plate up the short ribs and the turnips, and we'll be ready to have dinner. Okay, today on Cooking the Books with Heather, we made slow roasted beef short ribs with herb scented turnip puree and turnip gremolata. That's a whole lot of words. From Deep Run Roots. It's Vivian Howard's cookbook. And I have to say, my husband and I really loved it. It was delicious, and it was relatively easy, honestly. Not a lot of hands-on time. Just pretty easy. Some chopping and that kind of thing, but really, it was totally worth it. Now, if you ask my children, they didn't enjoy it. They loved the meat. The meat was very tender. It may not have been as tender if they were the larger size short ribs that she suggested you use. But all of ours were super tender and meltingly delicious, came right off the bone. So we enjoyed that. Next time I make it, which I'm sure I'll make it again, probably come fall, I will look for the larger ones and see how those work out. But yeah, 10 out of 10 from the adults, kids not so much. I think the chili flakes in the puree made it a little bit too spicy for them, but they have a very low tolerance for spice. And I was saying earlier that we have this cookbook stand. You see, it has a plastic flap here. You put your cookbook in, and it holds it open to the page that you need, and you can refer to it relatively easily. It's great, especially if the recipe doesn't span pages. But we bought it specifically for this book because it doesn't lay flat. Unless you're somewhere in the middle, it won't lay flat and stay open on the countertop. So, but it comes in really handy. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and please subscribe. Come back and watch me every week.